and he's been doing a great job of it, so do give him a follow. Now, next up, we have Russel Lamberti. I'm really looking forward to this talk because it's given by the company he represents, which is called Sakeliga, which I'm told is an Afrikaans word for Chamber of Business Commerce. Is that about right? Yeah? Okay, fantastic. The talk is about building solutions for state failure. I'm from the UK. I would say my state is failing right now. But then when I came to South Africa and saw the way in which, energy just turns off at the flick of a switch sometimes, I realized that while my state is failing, there are, of course, many states around the world that are really starting to stare down the barrel of a gun. And it's really getting quite alarming and quite worrying when you look at what the next 10 years or the next 20 years might bring. So I'm really glad that there are companies like Sakeliga who are addressing those challenges front on. I really hope he's going to integrate digital money into his talk today. Russell, would you please take to the stage, and to the audience, would you please welcome him? There he is, Russel Lamberti. Please put your hands together. Would you like this microphone or that?
Can I have the option of both?
South Africa has been experiencing one of the worst energy crises in the region.
What with the rising cost of living and high unemployment rates,
Spurger and Tshwane have been hit by serious water shortages.
Cash and transit heists have become a lucrative business for criminal syndicates in South Africa.
National state of disaster.
How long will we continue to let state failure harm our businesses and threaten the future of our communities? Many feel powerless because they have been led to believe that it's the state's duty to provide a favorable business environment. But we believe both history and recent experience hold a powerful, different strategic insight. That the responsibility for a favorable business environment lies not with the state, but with business people themselves.
So, how do we take back responsibility for our business environment? We believe it starts with having a strong, purpose-built, state-proof vehicle. A vehicle that develops scalable solutions to state failure and disorder. A vehicle capable of mounting comprehensive legal challenges and creating powerful precedents.
This vehicle is Sakeliga. Sakeliga is powered by business people who share a vision. We are now the premier litigant on commercial matters in the public interest, and our many important victories are their victories. And with continued and growing support, we will keep winning crucial cases. Sakeliga supports a growing footprint of affiliated business chambers across the country. And with our numerous partners, we are investing in alternatives to failing state services in areas such as security, commercial disputes, and trade relations.
State failure is accelerating, and it is leaving vacuums that will be filled by the chaos of poverty, decay, and crime unless we intensify our mission and increase our impact.
If communities and the business sector does not take up our constitutional responsibilities and our constitutional rights, nothing will be left for our children and the future of this country.
In order to create a better future for our children, it is crucial that we find a better balance between the role of the state and the role of businesses.
If we fail, you might still make money, but to what end if you have to leave the place you call home? We can create solutions to problems most don't even realize can be solved. We can fill the vacuums with order and craft a secure and purposeful future. We can turn state failure into an opportunity.
And in order to do that, you need a partner that's obviously educated and offers the know-how to do these things. And we feel that Sakeliga is the partner and the only partner to do that.
Sakeliga is bringing together mission-aligned partners who understand the urgency and the opportunity in the task before us. Let us be responsible stewards, protect our communities from a failing state, and secure a flourishing economy in the place we love.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's wonderful to be here this morning. My name is Russel Lamberti of Sakeliga, which means Business League. And I'm going to talk to you today about state failure and what solutions look like. What do we mean? What do we mean by state failure? What is state failure? State failure is your local municipality mismanaging its finances so much that it can't pay Eskom, and the nationalized power producer, who then decides to cut off your entire town despite everyone in that town, or almost everyone in that town, in good standing and paying for their electricity bills. And so the threat of an entire town being completely cut off from energy, that is what state failure looks like. And Sakeliga fought back against that and kept the lights on in those towns on behalf of thousands of businesses, saving tens of billions of rands of economic damage to people in good standing on their electricity accounts. State failure is failed procurement policies by governments who rack up enormous procurement bills because they procure on the basis of race, or they procure on the basis of local content requirements, which distorts value and undermines value provision to communities across the country. Sakeliga fought a 5-year court battle to restore better value-driven procurement in all levels of government, and we won in the Constitutional Court in that regard 2 years ago, and had declared unlawful the finance minister's regulations on procurement. State failure is the first cholera outbreak in South Africa in a township in Lichtenburg in the Northwest Province. The first cholera we've seen in this country in perhaps over 100 years. Why? Because the state has been unable to deliver any proper sanitation services. Water services have failed. Electricity is failing. If you don't have electricity, you can't pump the water, you can't pump sewage, you can't get systems moving. Sakeliga is fighting a long and protracted court battle in Ditsibotla municipality to have that municipality run by the people from that town who really care and who are capable of taking over those functions. We are looking to establish a local organization to be able to take over the running of that town from the state. And we're making significant progress in that regard. State failure is when a truck breaks down on the highway and it gets looted by common criminals or attacked and sabotaged by organized hijackers. This is going on highways across this country. It was said earlier that you're in a beautiful city, and you are indeed, but it's not a perfect city by any means, and nor is it a perfect country. We are facing tremendous challenges. So Sakeliga is looking to replace the failed state highway patrol with a private highway patrol, to start taking back our highways from criminals, to start engaging with violent crime that is sabotaging and ruining our commerce. Sakeliga is a purpose-built vehicle for creating scalable solutions to state failure. Our goal is a thriving economy, and we believe that to achieve that goal, we need to tackle in this country state failure at various levels, and we think that that is best housed in a non-profit, purpose-built vehicle like Sakeliga. And so we are a non-profit organization founded in 2011. We are funded by close to 10,000 committed funders every month, and they give us anywhere from 50 Rand a month, let's say $2 or $3 a month, all the way up to 150,000 Rand a month. And so we have a broad spectrum of supporters. We have supporters and funders from young professionals to established entrepreneurs to pensioners who just care about the future of their grandchildren and back our mission. We aim to tackle state failure through two primary mechanisms. Number one is we engage in commercial litigation in the public interest. So public interest litigation is critical for what we try and do. And the second leg is alternative structures, coordinating alternatives to failing state governance structures, to failing state coordination mechanisms. It was said by one of the, I think it was Kamal in the intro, that the changed law in El Salvador was a great help. And we can spurn laws and legislation and what states do as much as we like. But the fact is that there is a legal order and it is backed by some degree of force, and it does matter. It has an authority and it has a meaning, and it is important that we try and shape the constitutional order, and I use that word constitutional with a small c, not so much a big C, how the society is actually constituted. And courts of law, while they remain proper, vested with legitimacy, and delivering sound, rational judgments, can be used very effectively in this regard and should be used. And Sakeliga uses this constantly to push our mission forward. And we do that to try and create reform where possible, so that we create space for building alternative structures where necessary. This is our mission. And we focus on three key areas. So our goal is to create a favorable business environment. You can't do that in this country, at least, unless you are tackling threats to trade and property protection, unless you are addressing problems in shared infrastructure, particularly shared infrastructure that is controlled by the failing state, like energy, like roads, like water services, like sanitation services, and so much else. And thirdly, we have to be tackling the area of security. You need to understand this morning that in this country, our police force is not just failing, but is almost at the point of total failure. Now, that's not true in every police precinct across the country, but it is certainly true in many parts of this country. The police are ineffective, either unwilling or unable to do their job, sometimes aiding and abetting organized crime. And in very small pockets around this country, good policemen and women are trying their best to hold the line. And so we have to recognize the importance of these three areas of dysfunction, and so we tackle those. Right, so at the start of that video that I showed you, we asked this question: for how long can we let state failure harm our businesses and threaten the future of our communities? And in some ways, I think Bitcoin can help us get to an answer. So we could ask this question from a monetary perspective like this, perhaps. For how long will we let state corruption of money, the state monopoly on money, and its mismanagement of currency harm our businesses and threaten the future of our communities? And the thing with this is that for many, many years, good Austrians and other good monetary realists recognized that money had been severely corrupted. This is an age-old problem, but certainly through the course of the 19th and then especially the 20th century, this became an institutionalized phenomenon. Now, the problem was, and what we discovered over the decades, was that lobbying states and engaging in advocacy with states didn't help. It actually emboldened governments. It ended up vesting central banks with enormous power. And what we saw really at the core of this is that states don't have the desire to change. They don't have the desire to reform money. They have this tremendous control over money and currency. We have to figure out new ways of unseating that control. And so in many ways, we need to understand that the battle of ideas, whilst important, is not sufficient. And Bitcoin came along, and it was a solution not through rhetoric or through advocacy or through argument, but through building. Someone came along and built a scalable base layer to start addressing this problem. Now, what we've seen over the intervening, 15 years or so, is that this is not a quick process. And what's happened upon that base layer is billions of hours, I would imagine, of building, of development, because you've got to turn that base layer, right, to something that can be integrated and unseat the existing financial order. It's not just about this really cool tool that's limited in supply. You've got to deliver it that final mile. You've got to make it make sense to people. People have to be able to adopt it, trade it, save in it. And so that requires, as we've seen, an enormous amount of effort. So what does Bitcoin teach us about this question? As we take this question outside of the monetary realm, to the realm of infrastructure management, to the realm of crime and safety and security, to the realm of managing port infrastructure. You know, you're in Cape Town, there's a beautiful port here. We showed it on our video. It's a dysfunctional port. It doesn't work very well. The state port management company is failing. Throughput in that port is clogging up. It's a massive issue. How do we solve that? For how long will we let that threaten us? And Bitcoin's answer for us is the following. The answer is, until we build alternative institutions and mechanisms with the authority to resist and replace failing states and failing state structures. That might sound kind of obvious, but it's only obvious to you as a community, I think. I don't think that's super obvious once you get outside of this Bitcoin and monetary realm. Most people think that the answer is, well, for how long? Until we vote harder next time. For how long? Until we protest louder. Until we get on the streets and have a bigger march. Those things don't actually change an entrenched status quo with deep vested interests. The insight here is you have to go and build the architecture of freedom. And that takes time. You have to build the alternative. You have to build the off-ramps to parallel structures, to alternative structures. It doesn't come because you wrote a clever article about sound money. It doesn't come because you read Hayek on monetary competition, or Mises on fiduciary media, okay? Those are good things, those are great ideas, but they have to translate to the building of the architecture of freedom. And so that is what Bitcoin can teach a civil society community and a business community that is seeking to resist state failure and establish commercial and societal order out of this chaos, out of this kind of anarcho-tyranny that prevails. So I think this is absolutely critical. And Farzam, who I think unfortunately has just left, he made a really important point in his talk. He said, this is not going to be a quick process. What we face in the world and what we face coming down the line is a multi-decade, maybe even multi-generation restoration process. We have vested so much power in the modern state, not over 10 years, not over 20 years, not in the digital era, over hundreds of years, we have vested so much authority and control in the hands of states. And unseating those authorities and that control and creating viable alternatives and viable parallels is going to take a very long time. And some of you in the Bitcoin community who are good realists understand this, right? I would be willing to bet that many passionate Bitcoiners in 2012, 2014 would have said, man, the dollar's days are really numbered. The dollar's got like 5 or 10 years left. The dollar still stands. It's still going. There's all sorts of threats. There's beautiful competition coming down the line. There's a community that's building the architecture of freedom and money, but it takes time. Okay? That's what we're getting. We're getting that it takes time. And I think we need to understand this. This is a long process, and so we must dig in. Let's embrace that process. Let's embrace that length of time. Think beyond your lifetime. Think multi-generationally. We're living in a world that is in many ways a big mess, but there's also some fantastic emergent developments. Bitcoin is just one of those fantastic emergent developments that give us hope for solutions. But it's not just, of course, the lessons that business can draw from Bitcoin. Bitcoin happens to be an attempt, a bold, audacious, genius, brilliant attempt at sound money. And sound money is one half of every transaction. Commerce and sound money are completely interlinked. They are completely codependent. So to create scalable solutions to a thriving economy, something like Bitcoin is critically important. Sound money solutions, the architecture of sound money, not just the base layer, the payment mechanisms, the various financial services that are built on top of that. We represent at Sakeliga a business community that they wake up every day not thinking about Bitcoin. They wake up every day thinking about how can they sell their product and add value to their customers, outcompete their competitors, and build wealth. And so they need to be shown the architecture of monetary freedom by a community like this. You've got to link that to real-world businesses, and that's why this conference is so fantastic, because it takes Bitcoin from a theory, from a base layer, to something much more tangible. And of course, in my opinion, where that has to start is to start encouraging how businesses manage their treasuries, how they manage their surpluses, and saving in sound currency. Now, on the adoption curve of Bitcoin, it's going to be very difficult to encourage businesses to denominate trade in that currency. You have wild swings on this major adoption curve that we know has still got many years to come. But it's very exciting to me that there's a community that cares, and I just want to encourage you to build this towards that end user who's not as passionate about this as you, who doesn't quite get it like you guys get it. You got to go and I think Farzam also said something like this, you got to go and reach people where they're at. So I encourage you to do that. Thank you so much for this conference, gentlemen. Thank you for organizing this. We will continue to do our work at Sakeliga. We will continue to fight for freedom, to build the architecture of freedom in these various areas. You can support our work. Over here, we're a non-profit organization that has a donation and a funding base, so please get behind us. Get behind the work that we're doing. Sign up for a monthly donation or give once off to what we're doing. We're excited about where things are going. State failure is an enormous threat that we face, because when the state recedes, you see vacuums of order that can be filled by chaos and by crime and by decay. And we have to go in and fill those vacuums with proper order, with the architecture, the institutional architecture, the mechanisms of freedom. We have to go and build freedom. So here's to building freedom together. Thank you.
That was a great talk from Russell. I don't know about you guys, but I was to some extent holding my breath until he said the B word. But my boy, when he said it, he really, really gets it. That was really inspiring. And also great to see some dunking on Austrian economists at 10 a.m. in the morning. Please give it up for Russell one more time, guys.